Going ahead and making some beef jerky today. So gotta have some beef to start off with. These are really thinly sliced steaks. This is what was this, top round steaks, sliced thin. These are already probably a little less than 1/4 of an inch thick, so pretty thin stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and cut off the fat and any gristle. Now you don't want a lot of fat left on the meat because the fat doesn't take as well to the drying process, and the longer that you're planning on storing your jerky, the fat's going to spoil first. So you want as little as possible on there. So you do want to start with a pretty lean cut. I'm not too particular because in our house beef jerky never lasts too long. I usually eat it up pretty quick. So you know, I just go for whatever it looks to be the least expensive and is already thinly sliced. Of course, if you go to your grocery store, your local produce store, the butcher will typically slice it as thin as you want right when you get there. So if they don't have something prepackaged that you want, you can usually you know, request that they'll cut it to your specifications. But these pieces don't have too much fat on them, and this little bit of marbling that's in the middle, that's going to be just fine. And like I said, it's not going to last long enough to where any of that's going to spoil before I get a chance to eat it all. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the meat into the pieces that I want. So at this point you just basically make them whatever size you want. They are going to shrink, so you're going to want to make them a little bit bigger than what you want in the end. And really this just comes down to preference. You know, you can make them into strips or little squares or however you want. I'm going to cut them into long strips, probably anywhere from, you know, 4 to 6 inches long. And you can cut them, if you cut them cross grain, they're a little bit easier to tear apart as you bite into them. So and I'm not going to be very precise about this, but I'll just go ahead and cut off one piece here. And this might seem kind of big, but again, it's going to shrink down to a much smaller size. So something about like that. And they don't have to be very uniform at all. This part's pretty self-explanatory. And really the only thing that you want as far as uniformity is you want all of the pieces to be the same thickness. Beyond that, it doesn't really matter as far as the length of the strips or how many pieces you cut each piece of meat into. As long as they're the same thickness, they should dry in about the same time. Okay, for the next step, I'm going to go ahead and add the cure. Now, I just so happen to have one last package of the Nesco branded spice and cure that's in here. And what this mostly is a few different seasonings and then some salt and sodium nitrite, also used to help cure the meat. If you don't have one of these packets, in fact I've made it before without it, depending on how quickly you're going to eat it and how quickly you dry it, it's not quite as crucial, I've found, to use sodium nitrite. So I usually will just use a lot of salt and soy sauce, and that seems to cure the meat enough to where I've never had any, you know, bacterial issues or anything of that nature. So in this case, I'm just going to use up this last packet, but for the next batch that I do, I'm probably just going to use soy sauce, salt, and some water with whatever other little seasonings I want to put in there. As far as what's in the seasoning packet on this one, it doesn't really say. I think it's just your typical blend of, you know, obviously it has salt again, it's got pepper. I think there might even be a little bit of like garlic or onion flakes in there or something. I'm also going to add some diced jalapeno to this because I want to make this a little spicy, and I might even put a few dashes of one of my hot sauces. So I've got 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of water already in the container there. I'm going to add a little bit of hot lime sauce. This is habanero peppers and lime juice, just for a little bit of interesting flavor. And I never really think too much about what's going to go into the cure or the flavoring. I just sort of start dumping stuff in there and see what happens. I've got a freshly opened can of jalapenos, so I'm going to put a little bit of that in here. Now these are cured in vinegar in here, and I don't want to put too many of those because my wife doesn't want she doesn't like the beef jerky when it's too hot. I don't want to overkill the flavor there. So we got that in there. Let's go ahead and cut open the packet of the spice and cure. And I don't know where my kitchen knife just went. Oh, now I see it. But anyway, too late. I've already got my Spyderco Endura. To open that up, go ahead and dump those in. Again, at this stage you can simply use salt and whatever other ingredients you like to marinate the meat. I'm going to just go ahead and stir this up. Looks really gross, but should be pretty good when it's all done. I'm probably actually going to add a little bit more water than this. Get all that stirred up pretty good. Oh, that's got a scent coming off of it. That is strong. It's potent, but that's good. That's what we want. Okay, then drag over the strips of beef over here. They're off camera, but you'll see them as I bring them in. And then I'm going to go ahead and lay these all in here. Now, the reason that I'll use this resealable Ziploc container like you see is that after I get all the meat laid into this container, I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on and then hold the lid really tight and kind of shake it all around, turn it upside down, and kind of get the marinade to kind of soak all over the meat. Yeah, let's do a little bit more water in there. And why not? A little bit more of the lime and habanero sauce. I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on. And again, I'll do this off to the side of the camera just in case I kind of make a little bit of a mess. Okay, everything's pretty thoroughly mixed in there. Set that down and show you. Actually, let me set it on the edge of my cutting board and then I'll lift off the lid and show you. And then I'm going to kind of use the spoon to sort of flatten all the pieces of meat in there. You can see it's kind of swirled around on everything pretty good. So I'll just sort of smush everything down a little bit lower so they're all soaking in it a bit better. That looks really gross at this stage, if I do say so myself. Smells really good though. Okay, let's get everybody mushed down in there. And then I'm going to let this soak. You can let this soak. You probably want to let it soak for at least a minimum of a couple hours, about 2 hours. I'll probably let it soak for about 3 hours, maybe a little bit longer. And I think that this stuff's only going to take, it's probably only going to take somewhere between 4 and 6 hours to dry completely in the food dehydrator. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the fridge and let that chill out for, like I said, 2-3 hours. Then I'll come back and show you the next step, laying it into the dehydrator. The beef's been marinating for actually about 4 hours. It marinated longer than I expected it to. But I had some chores to do, so while I was doing that, this got a little bit of extra soak time. So I actually turned it over and pressed all the meat down a couple times to make sure that everything got a good coating. That's all ready to go, so now it's all about just getting it laid into the dehydrator here. So I'll go ahead and take the lid off. And as those of you who own a Nesco dehydrator or one of these ringed dehydrators know, you've just got a series of stackable rings that have these little, these little mesh or slotted little grill type surfaces. And then it's really just a simple matter of taking these strips of beef jerky, or soon to be beef jerky, and laying them in there. There's really not a whole lot to it. Now that I'm doing this, I think I might even do some apples and strawberries after this. Dry out some of those. Those are nice. My wife particularly likes the dried strawberries. I like them too. They're kind of cool. You can actually make up a bunch of dried strawberries and then keep them, if they're very dry, you can keep them in the cupboard for a couple weeks or even longer, depending on just how dry they are. If they're a little bit moist, put them in a Ziploc bag and you can throw them in the fridge. And then it's kind of nice because instead of having to keep fresh strawberries on hand, if you have like a bowl of cereal or some yogurt, ice cream, you just grab out some of the dried strawberries and throw them on there to kind of, make it just that much nicer. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and I also been wanting to dry some more jerky, so I didn't really wait for a good price. But if you wait for a really good price on the meat, then this is actually, I guess beef jerky is never really quite economical, but I'll say that it's a lot better than buying it in the bag from the grocery store or wherever. You can save quite a bit of money by making it yourself. So that's all of that loaded up on there. I'm going to put the lid on, and I'm actually going to plug this in the garage. I'm going to take this out to the garage and plug it in because it gets a little warm not unbearably so, unless you're using this. If you're using this sucker in the summertime, if I have this on the kitchen counter, it's almost unbearable, because it's not that it gets very hot itself, but when the room is already pretty warm and then you turn this on and it kind of pushes up the temperature by a few degrees, it can get a little blah. So I'm going to put this out in the garage and let it warm up a little bit out there. It's also a little bit noisy. If it's quiet or if it's late at night, I kind of like having it, you know, not anywhere near where I'm hanging out, and our kitchen is near our living room. So I'm going to put this out in the garage. This is probably going to go, I'm going to check it after about 3 or 4 hours, but it's probably going to be about 4 to 6 hours. And then this should all be done, probably closer to 4. So it shouldn't be too long before this is all finished. But that's it. It's already set to the highest setting, which is 160 degrees, I believe it says on there. Yeah, 160. And that's what I'm going to use for the jerky. So 160, like I said, I'll check it at about 3 to 4 hours. And probably around the 4-hour mark to as long as 6 hours, depending. That's when it's going to be finished. And then you'll see another video on that. So I'll see you back in a little bit. I'm going to take off the lid here and show you the finished product. So you can see from that top layer, I think I snitched a couple pieces off of this tray, but you can see the final result. Considering, you know, how large the pieces were before and how much real estate they took up, they've shrunk down quite a bit. So that's what you're going to be left with. And if you can kind of see a little bit of gleam on some of these, there's a little bit of shininess to them. There's a little bit of oil from the fat in the meat that has risen to the surface. And so what I'm going to do now, before I enjoy my newly made beef jerky, is I'm going to take the pieces and place them on a paper towel on a plate, and then I'm going to pat them down with another paper towel just lightly, just to soak up some of that oil, and that'll help them to stay fresher a little bit longer. You don't want them going rancid. Like I said, in this house, beef jerky does not last long enough to actually go bad, but it's still an important step to keep in mind. So that's pretty much it. Let me maybe tear into one of these pieces. And I like them pretty thin. I like my beef jerky pretty dry and fairly thin. So let me see if I can get it to focus on that. So these are, it's still pretty tender. I can feel it's got some give to it, but I prefer it to be really, really dry. That's just my own personal preference. The cool part about doing this yourself is you can stop this at any stage within reason. I mean, you don't really want it, you know, you do want it to dry fairly thoroughly, but you can stop at any stage if you like your beef jerky more tender. You know, you just stop the process earlier. Just for reference's sake, this was about 4 hours. I think it was about 3 hours, 45 minutes to 4 hours when I stopped it. And I'm pretty happy with the end result. I'm going to go ahead and try a piece. And delicious. Just a hint of spice from the jalapeno that I put in there, but only the lightest bit, so my wife will still be pretty happy with this. I don't think she's going to think it's too spicy. I'm going to go ahead and empty this out, pat these dry with paper towels, and I'll be good to go. It's some new beef jerky. Okay, I just wanted to make one last little note. This was originally 1.66 pounds and has resulted in approximately 10 ounces of beef jerky. So, you know what? Okay, and my wife just stole a piece. Thanks. Anyway, so for our 1.6 pounds of beef at $6.13 and making about 10 ounces of beef jerky, if you consider the average bag of beef jerky is probably, you know, 3.5 ounces for about $4 or $5, you're looking at, you know, somewhere between $12 to $15 worth of beef jerky for $6. A little bit of your time and, you know, obviously the little extras, the salt, soy sauce, whatever little sauces or marinade you want to add. But I think it's worth it. I think it's a pretty good value by comparison, and it always tastes better when you make it yourself at home. There you go. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye.